Welcome to the Pineapple Perspective. I'm your host, Troy Hooper. This is sponsored by Pepper Lunch Restaurants. I have a great honor today to be joined by a fantastic industry legend, one of the leaders that many of us look up to and are listening to and watching what he does as often as we can. I have just this great privilege to be in this group of folks in the industry that give me access to some really phenomenal people. And today is one of those special moments. I'm joined by Jim Balis, partner of strategic operations group at Capital Spring. If you don't know who Capital Spring is, it's because they're in the background of, a few hundred restaurants. Maybe there's 1,000 or so there. I know there's 800 under one of the holding companies that Jim has been running for a number of years. But today I'm joined by Jim Balis, and not only is he a strategic partner, but he has a history of running lots of brands, building brands, turning around brands, and then expanding these franchise ownership groups at massive scale. So if anybody knows what's going on in QSR and fast casual in this industry, knows where we've come from historically and knows where we're at today. And we're going to talk a little bit about where he thinks our industry and this segment of our business is going in the future. It's going to be Jim. So, Jim, glad to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. And that was about the kindest introduction I've ever received. So really appreciate that, Troy.
Hey, the next time we're at a conference together and you're being called on stage, just let me know, and I'll ask ChatGPT for an introduction. No, that was all me. That was not ChatGPT. But Jim, yeah, really a privilege. You're a busy guy. I appreciate you taking the time. There's a lot going on. You've got a real big business you're responsible for. You're always building and doing things, and we just want to pick your brain a little bit. But we always start the show to help get to know our guests by asking them, what does hospitality mean to you?
I think a lot depends on the segment. I don't mean to dodge the question, but hospitality and fine dining is very different from hospitality and casual dining and hospitality and fast casual and QSR and even coffee. I think in the fine dining, it's pretty obvious, and it's what people sort of lean into, which is service standards, cleanliness, a lot around respect. You want to feel respected as a consumer, and that you're being delivered, what you're paying for. Whereas in QSR, most often QSRs are visited for convenience, sort of belly filling, or, you may be a mom who's in a car with kids screaming in the background and you just want to get them some food quickly without getting out of the car. And hospitality in that environment can be very different. It's a lot around speed. Obviously, you don't want to be treated rudely. So there's interaction with a human, sometimes not. But it means many different things. You want to feel as though the brand that you're visiting is doing everything they can to get you the order as accurately as possible, as quickly as possible, and with a smile and appreciating you for your business. So it really does mean different things in different segments.
How do you think hospitality in its best form could be delivered in QSR? Talked a little bit before the show, and it's no secret to anybody that many of us look to what Chick-fil-A has done and accomplished over the years, and where they are, and as sort of a standard setter in many respects. They're not the only one. I'm in California, where In-N-Out's well known for their hospitality and basically the burger version of Chick-fil-A in a lot of respects. But what do you think the possibility is, and what would you like to see, or what is your goal for bringing hospitality to the QSR sector?
Yeah, I mean, look, like we talked about, Chick-fil-A does set the standard for what hospitality should be in the QSR space. And, I will caveat that by saying most often that experience is delivered before the evening shift. I have had bad experiences at Chick-fil-A after 8 or 9 p.m. as they're getting close to close, and they don't have the same amount of staff that they have during their peak periods. And, you experience long wait times and some people that aren't as friendly. So I will caveat it saying that I have had bad experiences there, surprisingly, and I'm always surprised when that does happen because they strive for excellence in that area. But they definitely set the standard. Look, they have a tagline of "My pleasure" every time they're greeting you or responding to you. They amazingly hire top talent, and those individuals, those team members are trained. I haven't been through their training program, but whatever they're doing, it's obviously working very well. I know some of the technology tools they're using for training because we've subscribed to them as well. And they deliver on both the interaction with the guest. They make you feel like they're doing everything they can to move you through that line as quickly as possible. They're always hiring expediters, so people that are taking the order, taking payment, and then assembling food, and then just handing over the food so that you feel like you're passing through that line as quickly as they can handle the amount of business that they're experiencing. And then they do a great job with order accuracy. That is the number one complaint received by us as operators in the QSR space. And, most often it's either customized orders or, things like, oh, they forgot, to add ketchup in the bag, or, little items like that anger consumers because they're driving along.
Napkins, Jim. Napkin.
Napkin.
I don't get a napkin when I get a burger meal and I'm on the highway. What am I supposed to do with no napkin? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And maybe for another show, but I actually developed an idea for something called a naprin, which is like a napkin that goes over the food you
Oh,
from QSR.
keep the oil stains off my shirts.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly. I actually at one point tried to patent it, but that's for a different show. But yeah, so the order accuracy is a big component. They do a great job there. Obviously, the simplicity of menu helps. It's harder for Jack in the Box than it is for Raising Cane's, just given the menu complexities and modifiers that are available in both brands. But they do a fantastic job in hospitality by checking all those boxes.
So, how do you think? I would say that in observing Chick-fil-A over the last 20 so years, it is about the last 20 or so years that they sort of molded and modeled. And I think it's when they came to about 20, 25 years ago, they started doing brick and mortar padded drive-through type accessible restaurants outside of malls and things. How do you think they come up with this stuff? Like, what is it within Chick-fil-A or an In-N-Out or some of the handful of brands that seem to have a real focus on just development in general, strategic development, innovation, obviously hospitality? Is it just the culture? Is it just the belief system? Is it their ability to invest like nobody else can because of their unit economics? Is it all the above? Why are they a leader, and why do they keep showing up with stuff before everybody else?
I mean, I think it's oftentimes top down. Leadership normally drives the success of brands. I mean, obviously, Starbucks believes in Brian Nickel and what he's done at Chipotle, and which is amazing given some of the challenges he's faced. So, my guess, while not having been in the back rooms of Chick-fil-A's leadership team as they were making some of these decisions and developing their strategies, that they looked at a business and said, we're not going to be complacent. We're not going to accept the fact that, yeah, it's QSR. People have low expectations. As long as we get them through the drive-through quickly, they're going to be happy. And they said, we can deliver more than anybody else is doing, and, it's something at Sizzling Platter, we changed our mission statement about 2 years ago, really to put the team member first. And when I say that, it's easy to use words and say, oh, we're putting our team members first. It's all about the people. But at the top down level, as the CEO of the business, and I worked very closely with our president Nate Garn, and we developed really a strategy that even our meetings at the highest levels always started with an example of where do we put the team member first. Give us an example from the stores, from and it's everything from, some of the team members got together. One of their, a mother couldn't afford a wheelchair. And so the other team members got together and pitched in and bought this team member's mother a wheelchair so that, she could have that to get around. Like, that's an example of, a culture that we're trying to build there and really having a deployment strategy. And then, everybody from, the CEO down to the team member understands what that is executing against it. And they sat there and they said, how do we execute at the highest level? What does that mean? And they said, well, it starts with as soon as you drive up, right? We want these clean buildings, clean parking lots. We want to make sure that we're greeted like, you're in a fine dining restaurant, with the same level of service. And, we don't have to be QSR. And I think it's those leaders that are able to think outside of the norms and then really live and breathe the execution of those strategies down to the lowest level so that it transcends regardless of the position you are within the company. And, that's how they, I think, have been very successful with it. They've obviously done it and continue to do it.
I'll go backwards from your most recent part of your statement, tie it back to Chick-fil-A is, I had an opportunity to listen to a keynote and then subsequently interview on this show Monica Rothgary, who's the former COO of KFC, 4,000 restaurants. And one of her taglines that I think is so impactful is your guest experience will never exceed your employee experience. Your guests can never be treated better than your employee because your employees are who are treating your guests. And so it has to. And I agree with you on the Chick-fil-A side. Look, I don't know of very many QSR restaurants that have more employees on a shift than Chick-fil-A. Yet they make more money than all of us, combined practically. But I used to go into a Chick-fil-A a lot as sort of a break from being on the road warrior. And in going in, if you go in after the lunch rush, say that 1-2 o'clock time frame, you'll see 6, 8, 10 Chick-fil-A team members on iPads, on Chick-fil-A iPads. They're just build it in, right? And whether that's brand value reinforcement, lesson of the day, safety reminders, I'm sure it's all of the above. Again, not having gone through it either, but hearing from some of those team members the kinds of things that they engage with, it's just constant, right? And my friend Jason Berkowitz says, constant gentle pressure. Just constantly remind them what the goal is. But another thing that I think they do really well, and I strive to remind folks of in the industry, is I think they have an empathy for the guest. When they open at 6:30 a.m. and I'm waiting in line for that biscuit and tea to get on the freeway and have to deal with the 405 in LA, sometimes they're kind of slow. Those first 5-6 cars in the morning are really slow because one team member's running late or whatever. I think they have a real empathy. They always stick a coupon in there for a free something, or they apologize, or I don't want the extra hash brown, but they'll put a second hash brown in. They don't say a word to you about it either. They just do it and move on. I think they have an empathy for the employee and an empathy for the guest that shines through. And I agree with you. I think, and I'm glad to hear that you said that was a refocus of Sizzling Platter. Talk a little bit, for those that don't know a lot about you or Capital Spring or Sizzling Platter, give us a quick overview of the Sizzling Platter business, which is part of the Capital Spring family. As a large franchisee, what brands and how many, kind of a thing, so we have a sense of the scale, because we're not talking about a 25 to 50 unit group here.
Yeah. So on the Sizzling Platter side, we're roughly an 800 unit multi-branded franchisee business. So for those that know Flynn, Flynn's a much larger example of what we are. He is also outside of restaurants now with hotels and fitness investments, whereas we're strictly restaurants. We're also strictly QSR for the most part. We have a very small, tiny casual dining business, but we're in multiple brands. So we're the largest Little Caesars franchisee. Roughly 450 locations between the U.S. and Mexico. We're one of the top largest Wingstop franchisees. We're the largest Jamba franchisee, I believe. We're also in Jersey Mike's, Dunkin', Cinnabon, Red Robin, and Sizzler. So it's a large business. We operate a lot of stores across the U.S. I think we're in 12 or 13 states. I forget what the number is these days. And then we're in 2 regions in Mexico. And then it all folds into a shared services platform in Salt Lake City. And then on the Capital Spring side, we're not out there in the public a ton, but we're, I think, the largest restaurant focused PE firm. There's obviously larger ones. Rourke's much larger than we are, but invest in a number of other businesses. We really focus on the restaurant space. We've been around for about 25 years. I think we have over $3 billion invested in the restaurant space. Several thousand restaurants, a lot of which we actually operate ourselves. So they're not all just franchisee businesses or franchisor businesses where other people are operating. And, multiple brands. And we're, in everything from small independent concepts in California. We have a 6-unit fast casual business to, a coffee business in San Diego that's, 20 something stores in California and Arizona. We have, a couple of franchisee businesses like Sizzling Platter and others. We have some franchisor businesses. that operate franchisors as well as corporate stores, independent concepts. It really is the full gamut. We have a steakhouse chain, and we really try to be good partners to our investments. So a lot of uh, investors out there can stroke a check. And where what I've really tried to bring to Capital Spring as an operator my whole life is how can we be a better partner for our businesses? So an example is we have a deal with ADP that any of our businesses can plug into, where we have a very discounted rate. So even if you're a smaller business that couldn't normally afford ADP and all of its HRS platform, we have a negotiated rate with them. Same with Toast. We also have procurement, and so we're constantly letting people plug into that and leverage the scale of purchasing we have across all of our brands. And we don't require anybody to do it, but we find that people can find, especially some of the smaller businesses, can get much better rates. So we really try to be a good partner. I hold these educational teach-ins every few months on various topics. An example, I brought the guy who's head of restaurants for Indeed. We all use Indeed. So what can he share as far as what's the best day of the week, hour of the day, words that you should use that get the best responses, those kinds of things that we can help be a great partner to our investments. And I think that's what makes Capital Spring a little bit different, is that because we're focused on the space, because there's guys like me on the team, we can bring that additional support function to our portfolios that is above and beyond just an investment from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, that shared services and that leverage of economies of scale certainly benefits the whole system, right, from top down. I definitely appreciate that. It's something that we focus on, even as small as the emerging brands that I've worked on over the years, and Pepper Lunch. Even though we have 500 restaurants, I can't promise 500 restaurants will adopt any given product or service, but certainly if it means something to one store, then we try to emulate what the value of that proposition is to the rest of them, whether it be our corporate stores, which for us is 23% of the system, or obviously our large franchise networks, which they're all master franchisees in other countries outside the U.S. So totally appreciate that. I can imagine your leverage is pretty strong. Along those lines, and thinking about what you've been working on, and talk a little bit about maybe some things you've implemented over the last year or two, whether it's technology or systems or supply chain. We've had a lot of challenges with inflation, a lot of challenges with labor availability. How are you addressing some of those things? I think a lot of folks who listen to this and will want to listen to specifically what you have to say to gain those insights could really benefit, even at the smallest scale, could really benefit from the theory of how you approach certain things, but very specifically, talk to us about some of the systems you've implemented or processes you've changed over the last couple of years to address these challenges.
Sure. If this was a drinking game, I would say every time I say AI, you have to do a shot, but we'd be hammered by the end of the conversation. So I won't go through the drinking game aspect of it, but where we've looked at technology is really mostly around labor savings. And I think, a lot of it comes back of the house. You're seeing a lot more technologies that have been very successful back of the house. I mean, a great example, combi ovens, turbo Ameri chefs, clamshell, cookers for burgers that a lot of the burger chains are moving to, that, cook the burger perfectly on both sides in a specified period of time. But, so you're seeing a lot of technology rolled out against labor, mainly because of the labor challenges. At first it was hiring. Now hiring is not as bad, but, you're seeing pressures from, various state legislation like the California FAST Act that, all of a sudden you jump up to this, $20 an hour minimum wage and you're forced to take price, and, you're trying to figure out ways to be more efficient with your labor, or other areas like unionization that impact your business. So, labor is one of the big areas that we focus on to try to solve for. We've looked at, voice AI at the drive-through, and, tested a couple of different technologies there. We found one in particular to be probably the best of the best. Obviously, those that have read about Presto, that business has not had success. And I think recently, maybe closing stores. There have been a couple of others out there. But the amazing thing about voice AI at the drive-through is, the AI, the voice technologies become so good, especially with ChatGPT and some of the other developments, in the tech space. And so, it's just a natural progression that you pull up to a drive-through, and instead of talking to a person, you're talking to a chatbot. And what that does for the team member in the restaurant is phenomenal. They're then listening to the order as it's being processed, and then they're assembling it. So they're not having to take the order, put it into the POS. Again, you bear some of the order accuracy issues, and then some of the technology flow through on the backside as that person's listening to the order being taken. Then you look at it and say, okay, well, that's not enough. We don't just want a chatbot listening to the order being taken. How do we eliminate or expedite some of the other sort of touch points that slow us down through the process? One of them is payment. That could take anywhere from 13 to 30, 45 seconds. So we've looked at some pay with your face technology or pay with your license plate, where as you pull up to the drive-through, it's integrated with the voice technology, so they can say, welcome back, Troy. Would you like this item that you ordered last time? Obviously, there's AI. Everybody's talking about the personalization piece, so they're doing all types of algorithms that say, you order this particular spice product. Those who ordered spice products are more inclined to buy the ice cream for dessert, so we'll try to upsell you for that. And so now you're eliminating entering the POS, you're eliminating the payment piece, and now comes the order accuracy piece. So what are the technologies back of the house that help with that? Again, coming back to the biggest complaint in the system, there's now a KDS system that uses visual KDS instead of words. And so the most commonly used KDS and QSR is QSR automations that everybody knows about. I don't know what percent of the QSRs use it. It's probably in the 90s. But there's some new technologies out right now. There's a company called Perfect Co. that is doing a visual presentation. So as you assemble the burger, if it's a customized order, it'll show, gluten-free bun, it'll have a big G in the bun, and then it'll show like lettuce with an X through it. So no lettuce, extra ketchup. And so it uses visualizations. The wonderful thing about that KDS system is it's language agnostic. So, if you speak Spanish, if you speak Korean, it doesn't matter because you're looking at a picture. And so we're seeing tremendous improvements. And it's not just in the assembly of the item, but it's in the bagging of the item. I want extra mayonnaise, and it shows extra packets of mayonnaise in the picture. So when you're bagging it, you're executing against the order accuracy piece. So it's all of these components that are either saving labor, making labor more efficient, or delivering a better experience to the guest. And so we're testing a lot of these technologies and having a lot of success with them.
So I imagine your inbox is a nightmare of every company in the world with an idea trying to sell something to you. How do you find these things, or do you have a team, or is it a combination? I know you're out there in the conference scene with us as well, but how do you go forward, and do you go out looking for these things because you have a problem you want to solve, or is it just sort of the organic absorption, osmosis of all of these things coming at you at all the time? What's your process there, and how does something catch your eye?
The process, there's really no strategy to it. I wish I could tell you there was like a system or a strategy. It's a combination, like you said, attending conferences, events. We look at so many deals. We look at a lot of startup businesses, seasoned businesses. I'm always asking them, go through your general ledger. What is one vendor or technology you just couldn't do without, to see if there's anything we're missing? Or, we're always seeing best practices, but there's also best technologies, best service providers. How's this working for you? How's that working for you? And so a lot of it comes through just being exposed to so many brands. I think we looked at something like 200 different restaurant opportunities last year at the Capitol Spring level. And we're somewhat unique in that we don't just invest from the private equity side, we also do financing, so we can kind of approach it from two different perspectives. So I think we get a lot more inbounds than typical people who are just looking for investments. So a lot of it through that, conferences. I do research on my own when I'm trying to say to myself, God, I'd love to solve for this. Who's out there doing it? And I'll kind of surf the internet, and sometimes I see things. One of them recently came up where it was a technology that services Shopify, which is a retail space. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, oh, I wish they could do that for the restaurant space. And so I reached out and I said, hey, can you do this for the restaurant space? And of course, started to develop a relationship with him. And because we invest in that side of the business too, we naturally get inbounds. They know that
Yeah.
we're, big investors in the space, so people are going to call us up. So, what catches my eye again, it typically is things that we're trying to solve for at the end of the day, whether it's labor efficiency, you know, making the team member experience. I mean, you touched on something, Troy, earlier that is very dear to me. I mean, I always talk about the flywheel, which the listeners can't see obviously, but you think about a circle and you start at the top of the circle and work your way clockwise, and it's if we can invest in the team member experience, the team member is going to stay longer. If they stay longer, they're more experienced, they execute better against the guest. If they execute better against the guest, the guest is going to come back more often. If they come back more often, we're going to make more money. If we make more money, we can reinvest in the team member, and that flywheel just continues. And so, we're doing things, a lot around their first day, making sure their first day is exceptional. That's something we found out through some employee surveys that was an area that we were falling short. We're doing things with video screens back of the house where, if it is a team member's first day, it talks a little bit about them, maybe what sports teams they like, hobbies, things. So you kind of know them. The other team members can welcome them, celebrating, 1 week anniversaries, 1 month anniversaries. We do a lot around promotions, because again, how many times does somebody get promoted in their lifetime? Let's make a big deal out of it. We send them out to dinner, do things. The more the team member, to your earlier point, is a happier, engaged team member, the better hospitality they deliver to our guests, right? And so you want to fulfill that objective in a couple of ways. So, those things that solve for the issues are those that catch my eye at the end of the day. And I say, wow, this is interesting. There's a need, there's a problem. Is there a technology or service out there that's worth investigating that can help with that?
Yeah, I mean that's an excellent answer. I mean, at the end of the day, we all have problems we're trying to solve for, but we also want to have a advantage, over a competitor or over the market, like you said, in regards to, every Jack in the Box is not the same. And I use that example intentionally. I used to live in a part of LA called Santa Clarita Valley, and to drive from my house to the I-5 freeway, I passed 3 Jack in the Boxes. Amazing. In 2.5 miles, right? At each of these lights, there was a Jack in the Box. And of course, you hit different ones at different times of the day. But they had a biscuit. I love biscuits. It's becoming obvious. Biscuit breakfast sandwich. And so I used to grab that every now and then. And boy, there were 3 different Jack in the Boxes, but the one right at the I-5 interchange, it felt like a Chick-fil-A or better. I mean, it was a bright good morning acknowledgement and welcome on the speaker at the drive-through. When you pulled up, how's your morning going this morning? While they're doing the thing, can I get you an extra this, or do you need any of that? Just a really overtly different experience than a typical drive-through fast food restaurant. And I I went a handful of times. I was like, this is the same. It wasn't one manager. I took notice. It wasn't just that one manager in the morning. I actually one day drove back and got dinner on the way home just to see if it was the same people or not, and if I got a different experience. Boy, just consistently. So I took notice of the ownership. The franchise ownership name was on a sticker on the window. And so I started going to these other Jack in the Boxes. And then I finally found another one in another part of town, not in my town, but another part of town. And I got that experience again. I said, now I know the secret. The secret is the operator. The franchisee operator of this business gets it. They get it differently. And their experience, same brand, multiple locations, totally different experience. And so I think, and having studied obviously Chick-fil-A In-N-Out and everybody else and all the things we've talked about, that is the unlock. That's the difference. And yes, are we looking to have maybe less employees overall and be more productive because of the labor? Sure, these are challenges we have to be real about. But at the end of the day, we have to compete with everybody. And everybody is online businesses and new opportunities to create wealth and money outside of first job type environments like the restaurant business. So I'm really happy to hear that that's a major focus. Jim, what else is going on? What are you seeing as we think into the future now? You've been tackling AI, you've been looking at drive-through, you've been really focused on a refocus on the employee experience. What else is coming? What are you seeing in the near to midterm that is of concern or coming down that we need to really all be thinking about and looking to solve together? Or maybe a little bit further midterm in as far as innovations or differences. What's getting you excited, or what are you starting to investigate?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to investigate some of the phone ordering, even though it's an antiquated way of placing an order. It still exists. Variations of 2%. On the low end to in the teens for pizza. So we're looking at some of the voice technology to answer phones and handle those orders. A lot of customization. I think that, as everybody talks about AI, time for another shot. There's a lot of customization within AI. That's where you're seeing it headed. I think, subjects that I think might be interesting, to the listeners out there is one that people aren't really talking about a lot right now, but it was a hot topic 5, 10 years ago, which is loyalty. Everybody's saying I have to have a loyalty program, I have to have an app. But as consumers, we're so tired of downloading those apps and just not inclined to do it and get those push notifications that we're swiping away. And loyalty's almost become like a burden. It's viewed as a discount line. It's not viewed as the marketing tool I think that it once was. And it shifted from a points based or dollar based to something more surprise and delight. But then now everybody's doing surprise and delight, so that's no longer surprising or delighting. So the I think the loyalty space is something we're going to see transform over time, and it's probably going to be something that delivers different types of rewards. Whether it's you get your order faster, you get to skip the line, you get certain meal selections. They're already doing some secret menus and things like that. So I think that's something that we're going to start to read about. Not that I'm reading about it, but I think it's going to happen. So it's more of a Jim's opinion than anything else. I certainly think you're going to see a number of technologies in the robotic space. Look, we can make a microchip, we can make a car, we can certainly make a hamburger. So I think you're going to see more and more, especially in those spaces like coffee, where people are going through a drive-through. They're not Those that are doing that aren't as interested in the barista experience, right? So they're more just, I want my coffee and I want it right, and a machine can do that and can deliver on that promise. And so, I think everything from whether your food's delivered, brought out to you, or table busing, we're starting to see some of that infiltrate the space. So I think you're going to see a lot more automation. Again, as we all try to solve for some of the labor issues and labor challenges that are before us, we always talk about costs associated with labor. And I think, your listeners need to think in terms of above and beyond cost. What, the team members, like I said, that have the voice AI at the drive-through, one would say, oh no, they're afraid they're going to lose their job. But the reality is, as you interview these team members, they're so much happier because they're not stressed out, multitasking, right? They're just listening and executing and doing what they know they can do very well. And I think, as more of this automation comes in and it takes pressure off of the team member in various ways, I think it's actually going to be, a boom for culture and morale.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that 100%. It's not everybody wants to stand in front of a fryer for 8 hours a day, right? Or maybe it's the clamshell burger grill or whatever it is, or just scooping fries, right? There's other things they can do, and if we redeploy them, we can invest in them and invest in their knowledge and experiential understanding of hospitality. And I'll say at Pepper Lunch as an example, not as a commercial, we're taking the order taking across the counter transaction away. We are going to fully kiosk experience, but we're putting a hospitality host. We're redeploying that person out front, and we're going to be teaching them about hospitality and eye contact and smiling, and the difference of standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody next to a kiosk to demonstrate or guide or get them started, and how like personal that can be. Taking notice of things. I was in one of our restaurants the other day, and 4 middle-aged white ladies with luggage walked in, and I was like, oh, this is, I'm not letting this one go. I ran right up to them after I let them look at the menu for a minute. All right, I've just got to ask, why are you here? Why are you in Artesia, California, a very Asian community, right? You definitely came from the airport oh, some friend in Utah told us we had to go to a pepper lunch on our way to Disney. I was like, this is phenomenal. Tell me the story. Let me get you a little extra. I want you to try this. And obviously you just give them a little extra something to give them, an experience. But, that's our focus, is not getting less people. We already only run a store with 4 to 6 human beings, right? We actually want to bring more hospitality, more service, more relationship, and really build community. And to your point of loyalty, I agree. I saw a survey, I've seen it 2 or 3 times the last couple of years, where when you ask consumers what the trigger was, or what was the causation of them coming to your restaurant today, if you do that at scale, loyalty was like the bottom of the reason they came. They did not come to redeem their free milkshake. They did not come to earn more points. That was not the difference between choosing Chick-fil-A today and somebody else today, right? So I think you're right on with that. I think we have to really rethink what loyalty. And I think it's just community based, right? It's building community and relationship with your customer and knowing them. And as you said, what I'm looking forward to is really finding those technologies that can truly deliver on identifying the consumer independently as to their interests. And back to Chick-fil-A, only reason I actually go to Chick-fil-A more than I should is because I can push the button. I think it's 3 times. I mean, it saves my favorites. It saves my last order. If I modify it, ask me, do you want to keep this as a modification for your future? Or is this just a one-time thing? You just felt in the mood for it. It's just that ability to make it easy and recognize me. And by the way, they recognize me. They see my truck come through the drive-through. Morning, Troy. They know it's me. And the technology helps them do that. But they also take the time and care. So I think your points are all very well taken. I'm very excited. I am always trying to trail behind you at these conferences and see what you're looking at. I've come up to you and said, what's the name of that AI ordering system? I don't even have drive-throughs. I'm just fascinated when you have the ability that you have to get access to these types of things at scale and test them. I think you have the ability to test things that smaller emerging folks don't get a chance to. So you have a lot of those advantages we like to learn from. Jim, tell people how they can find your restaurants, the things that they might want to further investigate about the Jim Balis and Capital Spring world as we wrap up today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously on LinkedIn. My email address is jbalis@capitalspring.com. All pretty straightforward. The spelling of my name is simpler than one would think. It's kind of looks like it's spelled like basil, but it's Balis. So yeah, they can get a hold of me in a variety of different ways. Go to the Capital Spring website and go to our team. You'll see me there. I think it's in alphabetical order. So I'm early on in the faces, but that's pretty much it.
All right, Jim, we always end these with a couple of personal questions to humanize you and get to know you a little bit better. When you're in that car at that drive-through, what is the coffee order? What are you getting? Whether doesn't matter what brand. What are you craving when you go through the drive-through and get your coffee in the morning?
Oh, this is embarrassing, but I'm actually a sugar-free vanilla person. Yeah, sugar-free vanilla and heavy cream because I try to stick to a keto diet. So heavy cream, believe it or not, has 0 carbs relative to half and half in milk. So
and fat's not bad for you. It's a good energy source. So a little
it's a
milk
good
fat's
energy
good for you.
source. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have plenty of it, so I hope it is.
there you go. Well, you're a lot thinner than I, so I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that advice. Uh, Jim, the Olympics just wrapped up. Do you have a favorite Olympic sport? Are you tuned into the Olympics? Is there something that you like to check out and root for?
I mean, obviously the Olympics is a lot of fun. I think the greatest thing about the Olympics is seeing so many different cultures and countries come together, some of which even can't raise their own flag. I was reading that Taiwan has to operate under a Taipei flag. They can't operate under a Taiwan flag. Just about all of these countries that sometimes are at odds with each other coming together and hugging each other and rooting each other on. I do like to watch ping pong. I
Oh,
find that
nice.
to be incredible. As a very poor player myself, it's amazing to watch how active it is and the types of spins they use and how aggressive they can become. It's truly incredible.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that. I actually saw a TikTok last night of a clip of one of the crazy volleys they had in the Olympics recently, and guy scooped it way up off the ground, and it went up, and then he was able to spin the ball so it hit the other guy's side, but then went off the table on his side, so he got the. It was crazy. It's a that's a true art form for sure. I just want to see pickleball. You may or may not know I've kind of gotten into pickleball the last year since RLC. By the way, Pepper Lunch is going to be the exclusive vendor, partner, sponsor of the Restaurant Leadership Conference 2025 pickleball event.
Nice.
We took the whole place. We're going to turn it into a day club with a DJ and cocktail waitresses and some nice bites. We're going to have a lot of fun out there, but I can't wait to see I don't understand why pickleball. I can't believe pickleball is not in the Olympics. Come on, pickleball. You've got a professional U.S. league now. Let's go. But pickleball is just I tell people, they're like, well, what is pickleball? It's like, I say it's ping pong if you were standing on the table. It's half the size of tennis and 100 times the size of ping pong, but you're basically standing on a table playing ping pong with each other. So
well, it's interesting, when you go to Europe, they have a different version of it. I think one thing that will have to happen to make it an Olympic sport is they'll have to standardize it.
Yeah, I did not know that. See, now I've got a YouTube European pickleball. Do they call it pickleball over there? And it's just the rules are different?
They call it something else. I don't remember what they call it.
I'm going to look into this.
But yeah, look into it. But paddleball, I think is what they call it.
Oh, okay.
Or
there
just
you
paddle.
go.
Just paddle.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, going to check it out. Now we have to decide whether we're building pickleball entertainment venues or paddleball, or is it pickle and paddle? I don't know. We're gonna figure that out. Jim, it's been a lot of fun. It's been very insightful, very educational. I really appreciate your time. You're a busy guy with a really big business and a lot of responsibility. Looking forward to seeing you out there on the circuit. See you at the beach here in the next week when a bunch of our C-suite friends get together and talk about these kind of conversations and help each other out and look at what the future looks like for our industry. I love working with you and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks so much, Troy. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you for listening to the Pineapple Perspective. If you loved today's episode, leave a review and a 5-star rating. I look forward to welcoming you back next time.